Okay, thanks for joining us on a Veterans to Veterans Group, a Family Through Service, a Veterans to Veterans Group podcast.
There it is.
I got it right that time.
All right.
Okay. We are attempting to get better with our audio, get better with our video, and it's a process.
So in the movie industry, this would be take 3, right?
Take 3.
So,
Right.
And going along with our second YouTube video of the Second Amendment, I thought it'd be really cool for us to talk about movies we grew up watching and how realistic those movies were to our combat service experiences,
Yeah.
as well as pointing out some that were so outrageous that it needed to be made fun of.
Yeah. So I cut my teeth, as it were, on movies. War movies in the 80s and early 90s, basically the glory days of of cheesy war flicks, not the nitty gritty of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which were basically like almost documentary war movies.
But yeah,
like Iwo Jima and those the black and white that actually used real film.
It was either that or it was Cowboy and Indians, right? I mean, that was pretty much your experiences.
Exactly. So I cut my teeth on those things, but. So you go first. What's one of the ones that you saw that was absolutely not true to life based on your experiences?
Oh gosh, I'll name the situation, and it's been in a bunch of films. Lethal Weapon, Under Siege, and it's that whole perfect headshot with a pistol at like 50 to 100 yards.
Even
like,
in TV shows,
just
like,
one shot. And
Walking Dead.
Yeah, it's like so absurd. You're a moving target. You're moving. The target's moving, and you just get this perfect one shot. And
they drop.
and then of course they just drop right there. Like one shot is all it takes. So
and they drop, squeezing the trigger.
Yeah.
And they go flying back 10 feet, which is just not the way it goes.
So yeah, that's one of those obvious situations to me that is just so outlandish. It's almost comical.
Mine is a movie that's full of those, which is the movie with great movie, but not realistic. The movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and I think Alyssa Milano when she was a kid which is Commando.
Yes,
that's
that
Commando,
is a good movie.
with Arnold Schwarzenegger with the face, and he's running around and he's not reloading and he's shooting and he's doing all this stuff, and the guys are running with their rubber M16s, and you see them, But one of the scene, and they get shot and they're flying backwards after getting shot with a 5.56. It just doesn't happen that way. First of all, but second of all, there's a scene in the movie. Watch it, right? When Arnold Schwarzenegger has a 4-tubed rocket launcher.
Yeah.
And he goes and he swings it up and he sits down to swing it up, and you can see daylight through one of the tubes.
So you can clearly see that there is no ammunition in there.
Right. And so some production, and on Desperado, the movie with Antonio Banderas, there's also a scene where the guy kneels down and does that, and you see all the way through the tube. So whatever producer that's in charge of that failed.
Yeah.
But the big thing is, like what you said, with the headshots, with you're moving, the target's moving. The big thing for me, this takeaway is getting shot with rounds, whether it's a shotgun round or a rifle round, and you go, the enemy goes flying back like they got hit with a truck. The reality is you drop like you're a marionette with the cord snipped, but you certainly don't go flying back like you got hit with a vehicle.
Yeah, it's like an 80% drop straight down, and actually,
Unless they're
believe it or
moving.
not, is 20% where they would go forward because of the impact, and then it bends them over. But it's because that impact area is so small. Like you said, with a vehicle, that's hitting the majority of your torso, where this is hitting maybe a quarter size part of your body.
And don't forget the mass of the projectile is so small that it's just like it's really it's not going to happen. So it's funny, and veterans and anybody who's seen the impact of a it's just not it's funny. It makes for great entertainment, but it's not realistic. They're flying over walls and
Yeah,
you know this and that, and you know it's great. But what about movies that are more realistic?
Well, the one I want to point out, and I think we can both agree on, as far as the Army and the Marine Corps is concerned, is and the reason why is because the guy who starred in it is Full Metal Jacket. That first half of the boot camp,
Gunny.
and Gunny Emery,
yeah.
who is actually a drill instructor for the Marines, like he was able to portray what really happens. Obviously, some things have changed through the generations as far as what is allowed, as far as them putting their hands on you and swearing and yelling. But the majority of that first half of the film, as far as the way people are treated and treated equally and beaten down to be brought up, is absolutely true.
It is true. And Gunny, who was, if I understand correctly, brought in as a consultant
originally,
and was like, no, this is not this is how you do it. And the directors were like, get that actor out of here. Gunny, you do it because you're doing it the way we want it because it's authentic.
Yeah, they're like, oh, well,
fuck it, fine.
If you think you can do it better, get out there. And he did it better.
I won't do it better, I'll do it right.
So,
which is better.
And I think even extends to today's soldiers and Marines, is that there's a great majority of that aspect of the movie is still true today because it's what's necessary in building soldiers and Marines. You can't just take a kid off the street and hand him a rifle and be like, oh, we're going to war. This training is there for a reason, and it's specifically built up that way.
Yeah, there's a reason why training is the way it is. There's been thousands of years of warfare for humans and for people to know what works and what doesn't work, and unfortunately they're always trying to reinvent the wheel, but that's progress as it goes. But there are movies that I think kind of are realistic, and one of them that stands out to me is Saving Private Ryan. And matter of fact, it was so realistic to the time period, World War II. Saving Private Ryan, starring Tom Hanks. Matt Damon had a small role in it, and a couple other actors and actresses, mostly actors that. I remember reading articles that people were leaving the theater quiet but emotional, and they were being interviewed, right? And they were saying that, my grandpa or my father, depending on the age of the people, they were shaking their heads. They said, they never talked about their time at D-Day, for example, and I never knew. They said I never knew it was like that, and the veterans of World War II, the old timers who went to see the movie, they came out and they were emotional and they just shook their heads and they said they were saying everything but the smell.
Yeah,
because of the way the sound was like dulled down, and there was the ringing in Tom Hanks' character ear, the captain's ear.
That was a very great scene. Yeah,
yeah, and the beach, the water was red with blood, and all those little the minutia, the minor details.
Yeah.
Combined to make one battle scene, particularly the D-Day scene,
the storming of the beach,
the storming of the I think it was Normandy or Omaha, whatever beach, because there was multiple beaches if you're not aware, and so the people were saying I never knew it was so realistic and everything but the smell. Even the veterans were saying it was more realistic than anything they had ever seen. Obviously, I never served in a battle like that, but for me, hearing that. The crack kind of when a round goes by close by, it makes sort of like a buzzy, like a bee sound, like zzz.
Yeah,
sort of.
Yeah, it's got a very distinct sound for sure.
Whiz, it's hard, not a whiz sound, but like I can't do it, but it was making that kind of whoosh buzzing sound. And they got that correct, and it's kind of a crack if there's supersonic rounds as it goes past you, and the subsonic rounds make that kind of angry bee sound, and the thud and thwack as the rounds hit the ground next to you, and it's really, they did a really good job. And frankly, people calling out for assistance or for their mothers if they get hurt, these are all real combat things that people just don't. It's not heroic. Battle is not heroic like in some of the movies where, you get shot and you're falling down to one knee and you're like, tell my wife I love her. It's not like that.
Yeah, well,
Typically.
most likely, and I just want to clarify that with that movie, even though it has some true parts to it, and it has some stories from different things, like the story of a brother being the sole survivor of brothers, that comes from a couple different families, but in itself, that movie is fiction, and it's from different realistic situations in life that happened, where if you look at Hacksaw Ridge, which is almost a documentary style film.
Is that with Desmond Doss?
Yes, exactly. And so
Medal of Honor.
Yeah, the only conscientious objector, whatever.
Yep.
Well, that one, it was an actual play-by-play of his experiences, so that's a true story. So it's important to know the difference between based on a true story and fiction that has some relevance within the military world.
Yeah, elements of realism cobbled together. Desmond Doss, like Chuck was saying, was the conscientious objector who was a medic, Seventh-day Adventist, who was very strong in his faith, and he never picked up a rifle, but he got a Medal of Honor for his actions at the Battle of Okinawa and saved over 75 lives, not all of which were American lives. Some of them were Japanese lives.
I think about a third were, Japanese wounded.
Yeah, so...
Which really shows one thing, who we are as Americans, because that's something we've strived for since World War I, but also someone like him who is seeing so many of his friends in these battles like being killed, and he still has the wherewithal to save someone who possibly was actually attacking them. So,
he didn't even have a weapon to defend himself,
which is just a whole nother level of awesomeness.
So these are the type of things that veterans, and it's very common in the veteran community, right, to watch a war film or a TV show with a battle film or whatever, and pick apart battle scenes, uniforms.
Uniforms is big, and as you explained to me, because at first I didn't understand, there are specific uniform misconducts because of licensing purposes.
Yeah,
right?
I read somewhere, I don't remember where, so it's difficult, but I read somewhere a while back that actors in movies, the producers, they have to, by law, misplace certain insignia. They have to purposely mess up the uniform, so it's not stolen valor, but because they can't impersonate a soldier or an airman or a Marine or a Guardian for legal reasons. So they kind of mess up the uniform. They'll put the rank upside down, or they'll put a Marine emblem on, sideways or something. But veterans are always quick to be like, hey, that's not accurate, this is not accurate, whatever the case is, or this guy, there's no way he could have served in the Civil War, why does he have a Civil War action ribbon or whatever.
And that's very service branches service specific, because there are certain things that are either officer or enlisted or you get when you're an NCO, or certain things of that nature. And for example, in That's My Boy, one of the guys is portraying to be a Marine, and he's wearing dress blues. He's wearing the top of an officer. He's wearing a blood stripe of an NCO, but his rank is a PFC. So, so you got three different things. I mean, in the end, you find out he was actually portraying that anyway to, get his mom and dad on his side, so they didn't know what he was really doing. But it's just really interesting, because unless you're in the Marines or know about Marine history and their rank structure, you wouldn't notice that.
You're thinking, oh, that's a cool uniform, or that's a weird looking uniform, whatever the case is. So it's a very service specific thing, and I think maybe police officers will pick apart a police officer uniform, or maybe a firefighter. Same, possible that they do the same type of thing. Or professional fighters would say, "There's no way that could take that guy down," or whatever.
Well, especially nowadays, we have so many TV shows based off of EMT or firefighters or police officers. So I think that's a good point that I never really thought of, was that the people who actually live those lives are going to be able to pick up on some of those,
Well, I think
specifics.
I think they would, because anybody who takes pride in a dress uniform will immediately pick up on a uniform that's not dress right dress.
Yeah.
So there's that, and it goes without saying, but movies do a good job sometimes with portraying things the way they're supposed to be portrayed, but I think generally speaking, they over glorify the wrong elements of war or service or things. And unfortunately, Hollywood, at least movies in the United States, tend to have a left-leaning bias. So even movies that are well put together can very often leave the viewer with a subtle negative feeling about the service or about a conflict or about something. So I do feel that a person who's watching a action flick or a war flick, do it with an open mind and realize that it's not true to life.
Well, yeah, and absolutely. And it's funny because you brought up as your movie Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and him and Sylvester Stallone both have been known to carry, like either 50 cal under each arm or M60s, and they're shooting it like just off their shoulder, and it's like all this great like those are vehicle mounted weapons for a reason,
Or
like
squad weapons.
So there is that extreme. But on the other hand, for specifics, there's a scene in the movie, not the TV show, in the movie Shooter, where the actor is running across the field firing, and he reloads while running, and it was so spot on. I was just blown away. The way he didn't stop running, and he reloaded and continued to fire. He stayed on target and all those things. It was something you don't see a lot of in Hollywood.
You're right. And when you know these things and you pick up on accuracy, it's sort of refreshing. John Wick series.
Yes.
Keanu Reeves has trained in firearms manipulation and handling.
With SEALs.
Everybody knows it, and it's apparent in the movies. He knows what he's doing. Even though he's firing dummy weapons, he's firing it as if he's manipulating it and moving it as if these weapons are real. Muzzle awareness, muzzle discipline, trigger discipline, all these things, things like that. So that these are actors who've taken their role seriously, and the producers have taken it seriously.
Yeah.
In order to make it more realistic to the people who notice these things. And I think the average folks kind of pick up on that subconsciously as well. But there is a time and place for just wanton destruction as well, like in the movie Predator.
Oh yeah,
when Jesse Ventura and all these guys, they're just
the governor.
They're just shooting, with Gatling guns into the jungle willy nilly, because when one of your friends shoots with a fully auto, all of your friends have to shoot with a fully auto,
right.
and they missed the Predator, right? Or I think they grazed him, But something stupid like that, totally unrealistic. And all of these guys, almost all of them, are anti-Second Amendment. Just putting it out there.
And
they've made their money primarily with, like Liam Neeson and all these guys, with action and violence and gunplay, but they don't want you to actually support people with weapons.
And to go even more extreme than that, you have Charlie Sheen, who I love to pieces. He's a great comic. He's come up with great stuff. But him in Hot Shots, and he's shooting a chicken out of a bow as if it was an arrow. And if it doesn't get any more absurd than that, I don't know what is. Come on. But it's it's meant to be funny. It's supposed to be so obvious that
Did
it's
Peter
funny.
make a statement about how bad that was?
Oh, I'm not sure.
They probably did.
But it's the Naked Gun series. There are films that are designated specifically to almost make fun of Hollywood's version of combat films.
Right. I think the big takeaway, of course, is just don't take things so seriously. These are movies. It's entertainment. It's not realistic. If you think that somebody's being a bad guy or doing bad things, it's because they want them to look out to be like that. In Rambo, for example, John Rambo, the first one, right?
Yep.
John Rambo's walking
First
across
Blood.
the bridge. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was approached by the town sheriff or whatever, and was accosted by the guy. He was the one that was being, abused for being a veteran. He was just passing through. So I've read articles that said, John Rambo is a dangerous veteran with PTSD, so ergo, all veterans with PTSD are dangerous. John Rambo didn't do anything wrong. He was being abused by the system, the bigger government.
Yeah.
So, you have to look at things in their full perspective, right?
And he says it right in his line to his colonel. He says straight out, they caused first blood. So, I mean, in this case, he means literally, like, they didn't just rough him up. They were beating him with the batons, and they genuinely made him bleed. And even if he had PTSD, they did far more than just triggering. They recreated another situation of post-traumatic experiences. So if you take it for every literal meaning, you need to understand that he wasn't triggered like fireworks going off. He was introduced to another traumatic event, and that's important.
And what I'm not trying to imply is that if you know a veteran, a combat veteran particularly, that you have to walk on eggshells around them. That's not what I'm intending. So don't infer that from my statement. What I'm saying is that just because a movie portrays a veteran or a service member in a certain light doesn't mean that all veterans or service members are like that. But you've got to look at the totality of the situation. All right? So remember that movies are for entertainment purposes. They're not real. And even the ones that are real say they're based on a true story.
Yes.
Not a true story, because otherwise they wouldn't be a movie. They would be a documentary.
Well, yeah, and a perfect example of that is in Men of Honor with Cuba Gooding. He's a Master Navy diver.
That's a great movie.
And there's a scene where his oxygen line gets hooked up on a submarine. Mm-hmm. That never really happened. What did happen was he encountered a shark. There was a very serious shark encounter while he was diving. But that's not exciting enough for what the movie was looking for.
Right.
So they put a Russian sub in. Like, what's more frightening than a Russian submarine? You know,
right. While you're down under the water. Right.
You know.
So, but in another movie would be the Chris Kyle movie.
American
Sniper. Again, based on a true story, largely accurate, but it's not a documentary. Again, watch the movie. Become educated on the situation and look up the real facts of the story and see how much they align to the movie, and use the movie as your basic, just like a book reading in high school, right? If you're supposed to read Of Mice and Men, for example, I highly encourage you to read the book. Don't just watch the movie because you're missing out on a lot of details and backstory.
Yeah, yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So, don't use the movie version to say, okay, now I know about all veterans because I watched American Sniper and fucking Rambo. So now I know about every veteran with PTSD, and I know all about Navy SEALs.
I'm an expert, right?
And I'm an expert, so I want guns.
So I think we're due for our firing squad. Is that correct?
Firing squad time.
So it's funny because you ended with a situation with a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
So this time, and I'll kind of let you take the lead after I present the situation. So okay. You're sitting at home, you're watching whatever action movie, and it breaks to commercial, and you see U.S. Navy come on. What do you see, Eric, when you see this opening?
Most of the time, probably 2/3 of the time, if not more, when you see a U.S. Navy recruitment video, you see Navy SEALs coming up out of the water, and the water dripping off their heads, and they're coming up in the jungle, or they're going up onto the beach, and there's an amphibious landing, and there's all this tactical insertions and parachute halo, high altitude, low opening insertions, and all this really tactical things.
Just
for
awesome,
the Navy.
Fun stuff, right?
Yeah, stuff that you're like, or dune buggies going over sand dunes at the beach, and you're like, oh shit, this looks so much fun. It's U.S. Navy and all that. But
what they don't show is all the sailors who are cooking or folding laundry,
swabbing the deck,
or scraping barnacles off the everything. Like only 1% of Navy or seamen end up getting into the program of BUD/S.
And then like maybe 20% of the sailors who make it into buds actually go on to become SEALs after the probation period. So it's an infinitesimally small amount of sailors who make it to become a member of the SEAL teams.
So if you are in your teenage years and you're being recruited by a Navy recruiter and you're seeing these videos, be mindful that the probability of that happening is less than 1%.
It's
for you.
probably as likely as becoming a member of a professional sports team. Ish.
That's, yeah.
It's far more likely that you're swabbing the decks and scraping barnacles off the ships because that's what you got to maintain the fleet.
Yeah, and just like you would most likely be a ball boy instead of playing, with LeBron James.
That's high quality H2O.
And that's our firing squad.